So, when I started writing this video, I didn't really take into account how much knowledge is stored in my brain from possibly like 2,000 hours of playing The Binding of Isaac. I got The Binding of Isaac when I was still in secondary school just because a friend had told me that Markiplier had played it, and I was really into FNAF at the time, so naturally I got really big into Markiplier. It probably turned into one of my greatest hyperfixations at the time because it was the first time in a while I had played a game that didn't really go out of its way to tell you what to do. I played a lot of Call of Duty growing up as well, being someone who grew up in the 2000s. Going out of my way to read the Wikipedia articles and pages and find out all the secrets that was happening, that was the best bit to it. And when there's a whole game based around that, it was perfect for me. However, I have a lot of friends who like to play this game, or want to play this game, but every time they play it and then I take over the controller, they're like, what the fuck are you doing? On the surface, The Binding of Isaac is a game about clearing floors, getting items, killing bosses, and eventually reaching the end of the game. But everything in between all these steps and beyond and even before that, it's filled with so much planning and strategic plays that are you planning out the run. You can force this game to give you an item that you want if you try hard enough. And not even with just resources, because if you watch enough YouTube, people like Albino, they can make the game do what they want. You want to get TM Trainer? We're getting TM Trainer.
Casually shooting. Oh! Oh, what? Oh! What? I just got suplexed into a chest! I just got suplexed into a chest because I got hit with TM Trainer, dude.
It's all possible, but learning it is so hard because you'll never learn it from the game. You'll learn it by playing the game, but the game will never tell you. I think a really insignificant yet still noteworthy example of this is Grey Pooters, one of the main enemies in the game. You find them in most floors. They don't deal contact damage. And on the surface, you hear that, and you're like, pfft, that means literally nothing. But then you realize there's items like Midas Touch or E. coli that will let you just walk up to these guys, touch them if you can time it in between shots, and just get free resources, a free poop, or a free gold. Like, it's insane. And this is something I now take into account whenever I'm playing. Those are the only two examples I can think of off the top of my head, or at least what I wrote in my notes. But even as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, so many items, so many interactions that can happen there that you wouldn't know about otherwise. And this is a very insignificant example. Everything we're going to go through in the video today are more major examples that I understand that the game can't really go out of its way to tell you, but you should know. Because if you don't know this, you're playing the game wrong. See, when you start off playing The Binding of Isaac, it starts off like this game that's really hard. You're going to have to do a lot of effort to get to the final boss. But as you up yourself on the learning curve, you quickly realize it's a puzzle game. You go onto a floor, you look at all your resources, and you think, how can I effectively min-max all these resources I have to get the best possible outcome? There are some mechanics in play that want you to, not abuse this, that I'll get onto later, that encourage you to go fast. But none of these are quite necessary in most runs if you're just trying to reach the end boss. And even if you are, you can do a lot of these things even under time pressure. Knowing small item interactions like this can make or break a run. Something like, oh, I know that this health up item actually restores 4 hearts instead of 1. So I can go damage myself in the sacrifice room, get some coins, come back, pick this up, use those extra hearts that I would have lost anyway to get even more sacrifice stuff, or even use a blood donation machine. Blood donation machine dropped another health up. Amazing. It only comes with experience, but you could also just be told this, and it's a lot easier. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to break down a lot of the things that I feel like most players just should know. These are mostly things that you're going to encounter, along with like item tips, stuff that will help you defeat certain bosses, just generally where your direction is when you start playing this game, because even something like that, I feel like your goal is not to get all the endings. Your goal is to unlock every item, because every item is another tick off the checklist, which is, I think, your eventual goal with all of this. Also, explaining what that checklist thing actually is, because, once again, the game doesn't exactly tell you. I'm going to assume as well that anyone watching this video has already bought the game. This is not a review, nor is it intended to be a review. If you're planning on getting into the game, I think you should buy it first, play it a little bit, and then come back to this video, because a lot of this, I'm going to assume you know enough about the game to even watch this video to begin with, because it would be way longer than it already is, and it is way longer than I initially intended. I think the main thing to start with, because this is one thing a lot of new players will want to do, if you're playing on PC, the modding community for this game is absolutely insane. It's Always lovely when a game has a great modding community because you know that it's going to live on for a really, really long time. We've had many DLC-sized expansions and even ones that have been integrated into the game, like with the Repentance update, initially just being anti-bit. Though I'll admit most of my mods, which I have a good like 50 of, are just reskinning things to look like Amogus or just different other characters from different things, because I think it's funny. But the main one, and I do feel like this is a must if you're playing the game, the external item descriptions mod. It will give you a description of every item before you pick it up. It will let you know all of its effects, along with other things like how certain items you have interact with an item that you're going to pick up, certain consumables, and you can configure it to like not tell you certain things like the name of the card you haven't picked up yet, because that's kind of cheating if you know what card it is on the floor without picking it up. Most of my time is on console. I mostly play it on PS4, obviously PS5 right now, and I have a good bit of time on PC as well. And whenever I play on PC and I notice this, the amount of times it has saved me from making mistakes is definitely more than I can count, to say the least. So highly recommend that one. Again, I'd recommend playing around with the game a small bit first. You don't want to like put all this knowledge straight into your brain straight away. You want to get the basics down. You want to know generally what some items do and what other items don't, which ones you like, before you start reading paragraphs and paragraphs of descriptions to find out the most optimal way to use each one. There's also some really good mods that do rework some of the enemies. I think some of them have been designed in a very Edmund Macmillan way that these quality of life changes can really, I'd say, improve the game, but that's to my own standard. I can't really say that you would prefer it or not, but do experiment around with them if you have the chance or if you just want to. Obviously, most of you are here for meme mods, so just to name off a few of my favorite ones, Skeletons Fucking Perish on Debt has made me laugh more times than I'm willing to admit, and has probably ended a few of my runs.
Okay.
Peter and Lois arguing over Ascension.
You're a stupid man! A stupid man!
Sorry, I just remembered the first time that I ever played and I was fucking in tears laughing. And my dog is every boss in the game, which a guy got his dog and turned it into every boss in the game. There's many, many more. Just play around with it, have fun. If you don't like it, just delete it after the next run. Fuck it. End your run and then remove the mod because it's annoyed you that much. Difficulty in the Binding of Isaac is a hard thing to gauge because there's a lot of things to take into account beyond your own personal knowledge. The difference between hard and normal mode is very drastic, though I obviously just recommend that most players play on hard anyway. You don't get nearly as many rewards for playing on normal difficulty, and after a while, you pretty much just don't get any at all. Hard mode is just the way it's intended to be played. It's like, I'd call it easy and normal rather than normal and hard mode. The game also gets harder as you reach certain milestones, and I mean literally just harder. It spawns more champions, gives you less consumables, and has more rooms per floor, making it so there's more gaps between you and where you want to be. If you're a new player, you're going to want to get used to the final boss, I say with heavy quotation marks, not actually being the final boss. Most of you will probably know that once you beat Mom, you unlock Mom's Heart, along with the Womb, which is going to throw most new players a spin because it does double damage, there's no items, your only thing you want on that floor is the final boss and maybe some special rooms along the way. There's also repeats after Mom's Heart as well, where you eventually unlock Isaac and Satan, and then Blue Baby and the Lamb. I use the term Blue Baby, most people call this character Blue Baby because it's, how do you pronounce that? So as you're getting better at the game, the gap between the start and the end becomes a lot bigger. And you're hearing this and you're probably like, wow, there's a lot of final bosses in this game. Again, final bosses said with heavy quotation marks. There must be a lot. Yeah, there's 15. There's 15 final bosses. Now, some of them don't become final bosses after a while, like Mom, like I previously mentioned, but you have a lot of options for how you want to end a run. By the end of it, if you have all expansions and you have most of your unlocks, or all of them, you will have 5 options for your final boss at the end of a run. Generally, it is agreed upon that the more expansions you have, the harder the game's going to be, especially with something like Repentance, which added a bunch of new items that are a mixed bag, to say the least, but the bigger the item pool, the less likely it is you're going to get one item. It's now a difference between a 1 in a 50 and a 1 in 100 chance per item pool to get that item, making it a lot harder to tailor your run to the effects that you want. All the other final bosses, which I have not necessarily mentioned yet, have special conditions for meeting them, and I would consider this spoiler territory. There's not much in terms of story here, but there is a lot in terms of secret mechanics that you can technically stumble across. I did have to look up all of these. I will 100% admit, I did none of these on my own volition. So, if you want to avoid gameplay spoilers, and I suppose lore spoilers as well, because it's a big part of the lore, you can skip to this timestamp, but in the meantime, I'm going to explain how to get to each of these, and some minor tips and tricks for how to get there and how to defeat said bosses. Mega Satan, I think, is where most players consider the end of their run is going to be. That's your general goal if you're just playing for fun. A relatively hard boss with some minor mechanics to get to that you can very easily achieve in most of your runs. Once you play the game enough, this golden door will appear in the chest that you can open with angel keys, and to obtain these angel keys you need to blow up either angel statues in the angel rooms, or if you go to sacrifice rooms and defeat angels there, you can also get them to drop their angel keys. Each key will also increase your chances of getting an angel room, so once you have one, it's actually not too hard to get the other one. All you have to do then is bring it to the final stage and the door will unlock. However, funnily enough, there's a few ways around this, like with Dad's key, an active item that opens every door, and yes, I mean every door, because it opens this one too. So if you never saw an angel room or any angels at all in this entire run, you can still get in there. This can also be achieved with stuff like Get Out of Jail Free card, Mr. Me, Sharp Key, Soul of Cain, Cracked Orb, and Book of Virtues, as long as you combine it with Mr. Me or Book of Secrets. Defeating Mega Satan will give you one of the game's endings, and sometimes can spawn a portal leading to another secret final stage, which we will get to in a bit. Boss Rush, while not technically a boss, it has its own secret mechanics to getting to. It is also on your checklist, so you would want to get to it anyway. It gives you the choice between 4, though sometimes it's 2, sometimes 8, items that after you pick up will spawn 15 waves of 2 bosses, which is hard on paper, but it's actually not that difficult. Most of these are from the first few floors, and they have very low health, so usually at this point I have like Brimstone or some high DPS thing that I can just go off to one side of the room and just start firing shots at them. Each wave will also refill your charge item by 1 charge, so certain items can make it a lot easier to get through this because it'll just be recharging over and over again. All you have to do to get here is beat Mom in 20 minutes, which is relatively easy. You can also beat her alt-pat counterpart in the Mausoleum within 25 minutes, and that will also open up Boss Rush. You can leave the room and come back as long as it's within 20 minutes, but if you leave and it's over 20 minutes, the room will close up once you come back. Though Mama Mega can still get past this, Mama Mega is a one-time use though. Hush is a secret boss fight that you can reach by defeating Mom's head within 30 minutes. Yes, I have done this and the Boss Rush in the same run, which is always really funny to do. A Hush's floor will give you 4 chests and 2 item rooms along with a shop. This is also the first boss to have damage scaling, a mechanic that we don't completely understand, but we know that the more damage you do, it gains something we like to call armor, so you start dealing less damage overall. This is just a way that Edmund can have it so the fight is more consistently to the same level, rather than you always either dying immediately to it or dominating it every time. Though you can still dominate this boss very easily. The Hush boss fight is a battle of attrition. You want really good survivability in this fight because the DPS you're dealing doesn't matter as much as other fights. Having something that can slow projectiles or erase them altogether is going to save you in this, but for the most part you're going to be surviving in a bullet hell, dodging shots and some enemies, and then doing damage, getting through all the phases, and eventually you beat him. Delirium is a boss that you can reach after certain boss fights like Mom's Heart / It Lives, Isaac and Satan, Blue Baby and Lamb, and Mega Satan. These all happen via chance, though if you defeat Hush there's a 100% chance that the portal will spawn, so if you really want to defeat Delirium, this is your way in. This will bring you to a floor that is a random layout with random rooms from random floors and multiple boss rooms, one of which will eventually be Delirium. A nice strategy that I like to do is bring around any like teleportation card or item, and once I go into the Delirium fight I like to teleport out, clear out all the other boss rooms, get their items, and then go back to Delirium. Most boss pool items are usually health ups, so it's nice to have the extra survivability for what's going to be a long enough fight. The Delirium boss fight mostly sees him transforming into other bosses, though it's like a version where he's just so much quicker and shoots so many more shots. He does have a constant stream of shots that come out of him no matter which boss he's impersonating. You're going to need good speed for this fight and then a good bit of DPS, though he also has damage scaling, so DPS isn't your forefront here. The Mother fight can be accessed through gaining the knife pieces from the alt path. They all have their own conditions to doing them. You can look it up, it's too much to explain here, the video's already too long. You can use this knife to then open a door after the Mom fight in the alt path, which will then bring you into the corpse, and at the end of the corpse you will find Mother. The Mother fight is especially frustrating for me because I almost never go there unless I'm just trying to get the item for that character. So every time I go in, it's almost like the first time because it has been so long since I've been there since. Most runs, I won't even think about it. I'll definitely go alt pat because it's the extra item, but I really don't fight this boss all that often, and it's not an easy boss fight. There's not too many hard counters you can do. You can do projectile slowing items, but this also ends up usually making a wall of projectiles that actually just make it harder for you to dodge than anything else. However, on her charge attack, you can sneak in a bomb, which will kind of like stop her in place, and then it blows up, obviously dealing damage. Or if you have Gnawed Leaf with a projectile like Cube of Meat, you can just stand there, block it, and eventually just kill her by just standing there, which is hilarious, but I feel like that's kind of what Gnawed Leaf was intended to do. I'm not going to lie. Okay, this is the last one, and this is the really long one that I've been dreading recording since, so please strap yourself in and get some popcorn because you're going to need it. So the last two are Dogma and the Beast, which can be accessed as long as you've beaten Mother once. Afterwards, this door will appear in Depth 2 that looks very similar to the Golden Mega Satan door, and the only way to get in here is by using the Polaroid, the Negative, or the Faded Polaroid. Now, naturally you may be thinking, I need to defeat Mom to get those, and you can't leave the Mom fight once you get in. There's a few ways around this, but generally you're going to want to just teleport out of there, and getting a teleportation item normally isn't easy, or even a card, but as well as the door beginning to spawn, there will also be a tinted skull on the floor that you can blow up to get a free Fool card, bringing you back to the first room after you defeat the Mom, or whatever other reason you may want to use this for. Another bit of tidbit knowledge. Also, a little side note, if you're planning to do this, make sure to leave a trinket in one of the previous boss rooms. We'll get onto that later, but it's a very, very good idea that you do that. So once you put in your little picture item, it will bring you to the mausoleum. But your last boss fight will actually be replaced with an item called Dad's Note, which will begin the ascent, a process in which you go back up the floors that you previously completed with more difficult enemies along the way. And what's this? That little trinket we left behind earlier has turned into a red key shard. Hold on to that, don't use it just yet, unless you know what I'm talking about, and then just use it however you'd like, because it's also a pretty good utility thing. Once you go back up all the floors, you'll eventually end back in home. Upon leaving your bedroom, you'll notice a little red outline outside the door. That's when you can use the red key shard, and look at that, you just unlock the B-side version of the character you're just playing as. We just doubles the amount of characters in this game. Because why not? You can then go further down the hallway to initiate the Dogma boss fight in the living room. This is, and I say this objectively, the hardest boss fight in the game. And obviously I have 2,000 hours in the fucking game. What the fuck do I know? But there's 5 more bosses after this, and this is the hardest out of all of them. Some of the attacks are so fast that if you have low enough speed, you literally can't dodge it. So if you're planning to do this, please, for the love of God, make sure you have high speed. This boss fight is so hard that if you try to look it up on the wiki fandom page, you will literally find 0 notes on items that can help you defeat this boss. Apart from Evil Charm, which can negate the AoE effect of the Godhead tiers in the first phase, but that is one attack in the first phase that you can help with. Everything else is just gonna fuck you up. Slowing down projectiles, same as Muddy, you're just gonna fuck yourself over. Personally, I recommend a build that is high speed and incremental large amounts of damage, because it's a lot easier to just line up one big shot than to just spray and pray over at him. You really just want to hit big a couple of times. After eventually killing Dogma though, he will drop Dogma. This grants Isaac with some flight, a holy mantle, and it makes it so that your speed can't go below 1.1. It also heals you up to 6 remaining hearts, so if you have like 6 slots with like 5 red hearts, then it will bring it back up to 6. If you have 4 remaining, then it will bring it back up to 6. It will always bring it back up to 6, never more. You will then be sent to this underworld looking area, and now you'll have to fight the 4 horsemen in their ultra versions in this more 2D layout, but since you have flight, it won't really hinder you that much, since you can still go up, down, left, and right as you would normally anyway. Each one of the bosses are similar enough to their original version, so I'm just going to go through them really quickly with like 1 or 2 tips, just so you know how to go about them. For Ultra Famine, a lot of his attacks kind of arc, or he has the horizontal charge, so you really want to keep vertical control. You want to be able to get above him or below him. You don't really want to challenge him horizontally. The Ultra Pestilence fight is a bit rough, but his maggot shots can be affected by things like Little Horn or Euthanasia, so you can abuse that a small bit if you come across those items on the way down, or up as well, now that I think about it. Ultra War has one of my favorite interactions in the entire game, which is safety scissors on any bomb-based boss. You can just completely trump the entire boss fight with this trinket because it will just turn all of his bombs into consumables. You could just leave them be, or you could just pick them up and use them against him. The options are limitless. Well, you only have 2. Ultra Det has 2 fairly easily dodgeable attacks, and then one that's hard for new players to dodge, It's the Shadow Strike. You can see where he's going to hit from based on where his red eyes are. Please keep track of that. I forget about this every time I play, and that's the one thing that keeps killing me if I beat Dogma. The Beast is what I'd consider to be probably the easiest part of this entire string of boss fights. It's mostly just side-scrolling with one analog pointed away from the boss and another one pointed towards it. The only real things to keep in mind is stuff like gravity actually affects here, so items like Flatstone aren't going to hop off anything because there is nothing to hop off of, and Dr. Fetus as well is just going to arc straight downwards. Still usable, but I wouldn't recommend it. Honestly, if you could get through the previous bosses without much trouble, or even with a little bit of trouble, or a lot of trouble now that I think about it, you can still beat this boss fairly easily. Just move in one direction, dodge projectiles, it's that easy. So, that encompasses just about nearly everything that's on the to-do list in the character selection screen. There's Greed and Greedier mode, but they're fairly self-explanatory and I don't really need to go into those. And that's generally the basis of the game. You pick a boss, pick a character. If you haven't beaten that boss with that character, it's time to start doing that. Rinse and repeat until you've gotten all of them and maybe done all the challenges, picked up a few other ones along the way, special condition ones, and that's it. So moving on from just general bosses, and let's just get into actual mechanics that affect the game. Curses have a chance of affecting your current floor as soon as you enter for that floor for the duration of that floor. You can counteract these with certain items, but they're very far and few in between that you're not going to have that much opportunity to do so. In Vanilla Isaac, your initial chances of getting a cursed floor is actually 1 in 80, but if you have Repentance, it eventually goes all the way up to 1 in 3 chances of affecting your floor. This is actually 1 in 5 if you're just playing Vanilla Isaac. A key note is Black Candle will always remove curses, all curses, as long as you buy it from the shop. And there's a few more specific examples beyond that, but we'll get into those as we list through these. Curse of the Blind makes it so that all item pedestals, instead of showing their item, will actually just show you a question mark, meaning that you don't know what's going to be on it. When that comes to item rooms and boss items, you generally don't really have to think about it, because boss items are usually just health ups anyway, or the every so often, damage up. Item rooms are 99.9% of the time good, unless it's something like Bob's Brain off the top of my head. Where it gets really complicated is stuff with shops or Devil Deal items or even Angel Room items, depending on which expansion you're playing. Some of those I'd rather not have. If you're in the Devil Deal, you can narrow down what you're going to get based off how much hearts it costs, because different item costs different amount of hearts. If it's 2 hearts, you know it's going to be, well, you don't know it's going to be Brimstone, but it definitely could be. Or it could be Blood Oath, and you're fucked for the rest of the run. And beyond the 2 examples that I just gave, secret rooms are by far the worst for it, being filled with mostly items that have major upsides and downsides, or just items that absolutely suck. It also means you can't really play around with the RNG aspect of the game. If you're playing as Isaac with the D6, you can't really re-roll any items because you don't really know if it's worth it or not, if I'm being honest. And when it comes to item pedestal generation, through the means of moving item pedestals or using stuff like Mystery Gift to spawn one in, you can do it in a room with your preferred pool, but generally, and I'll be honest when I say this, usually that's secret rooms because you can re-roll the item. If you try playing the game like you would normally with Curse of the Blind, you're going to lose out on a lot of value that you could have used your resources for maybe the next floor to guarantee a much better item that you could have forced into the game. Curse of Darkness really limits your visibility. The difference between Repentance and base game is actually pretty noticeable, where in Repentance the circle of light is much bigger but the darkness is much, well, darker. Darkness can be counteracted with the sun card if you're also playing in Repentance, and there is the item Nightlight, which will remove it for your current floor, but funnily enough not for any subsequent floors. But you also have this massive Nightlight, so it's not like it's going to be that much of an issue anyway. There's not really much explaining with this one, it just makes it a lot harder. You can use things like natural fires to light up the room, or other things if you have fire items like Red Candle. Curse of the Lost will make it so that you can't look at your HUD map, which is actually way more annoying than you'd think. I'd take a lot of other curses over this one just because of the amount of times I've missed boss rush because of this. Because I keep getting lost in massive floors, and I have a horrible sense of direction. Most people though, this probably won't affect you too much. Curse of the Maze will randomly bring Isaac from one room he enters into another room randomly somewhere else on the map. They have to be of the same size, I'm pretty sure. If you enter into a 1x1 room, it can only transport you to another 1x1 room. And because of that, there are ways of abusing this to your advantage by forcing your way into rooms you otherwise would have not been able to get into. But I personally just don't know how to do it. I've seen other YouTubers and streamers do it, but it is just way beyond my level of understanding that I still haven't mastered it yet. But if anyone knows how to do it, then leave it in the comments, because I surely would love to know. Curse of the Labyrinth combines 2 floors into one. Because of this, it can only occur on the first floor of each set. So that's stuff like Caves 1, Basement 1, Dross Run. You get the idea. It combines 2 of them together, which I think is actually an upside because that means you can get through 2 floors much quicker than you would normally. If you're on the first floor as well, both item rooms will be opened and unlocked, and you can also do the Devil Deal on the first floor by not taking any red heart damage, but well, if you don't know much about Devil Deals, we'll get into them later. Curse of the Labyrinth can only affect levels as far as the womb as well, because past that they're all just one level. You can't really combine heaven into the chest. Curse of the Labyrinth is probably my favourite, but that's only because it really benefits me. I like being able to get through 2 floors very quickly, which can save me from trying to get to boss rush or hush very quickly. There's a lot of mechanics within the game that are labelled as secrets, like Secret Room for examples, Super Secret Rooms, Tinted Rocks, and Super Tinted Rocks. In this section we'll also be covering Devil Deals, Angel Deals, and Challenge Rooms because I didn't know where else to fit them into this video. Tinted Rocks are blue tinted rocks that have a little X on them that will replace any random rock throughout the floor. You'll normally find 1, maybe 2 per floor. They'll give you stuff like keys, bombs, chests, and most usually soul hearts, which are very invaluable early on in the game if you're looking to get Devil Deal. I always blow these up as a priority if I can. The resources you get back from them are absolutely insane. Worst case scenario, I think personally, is if you get a golden chest with no keys. Soul hearts are amazing. Bombs, you're just getting back what you put in, and keys are more than an invaluable resource. Super Tinted Rocks give you twice the rewards but take twice the amount of bombs to blow up. They're also much harder to make out in my opinion, though I feel like that's intended. If you don't think you have seen one of these before, it's probably because you genuinely haven't. You need to do a very specific unlock to get these in the first place. So you've probably never seen any of these before if you're new to the game, but once you do unlock them, you know how to look out for them now. Secret rooms are kind of like a rite of entrance for a lot of new players. Once you start being able to predict where they are, you kind of just feel like a god. If you are that new to the game, you may not notice any certain patterns with trying to find secret rooms. However, the best way to put it is the secret rooms require as many adjacent rooms as possible, usually like 3 or 4, and you need a means of access in from every side as if there was a regular door there. So if there's a rock blocking that wall where it would be, then it's not going to be there. And that goes if even just one of them is there. You can imagine if you're inside the room, you need to be able to get out and the game can't remove rocks. So try and think of it that way. Because the floor needs to generate a secret room, they're actually pretty easy to make out sometimes because you can see where the game generation was like, fuck, we need to throw in a secret room. Fuck it, we'll put it there. And this is this slight curve, like you can see the 3 rooms connecting and it's like, you couldn't have made it more obvious, but I understand that for new players, it's not as easy to pick up on as I'm making it out to be. Also, depending on which version of the game you're playing, you will probably find that secret rooms are extremely overpowered with some of their items, Archy being just the main example, but beyond that you got Rock Bottom and Echo Chamber as well. For that reason, if you ever find a secret room with no items but a reroll machine, you've probably just found one of the best rooms in the game because all you have to do is get 1 item pedestal in there and you're eventually just going to be able to get whatever item you want. Super secret rooms function almost opposite to what regular secret rooms function as. They are actually connected to the least amount of rooms possible, usually just 1, and are usually located outside the boss room or the shop room. The rewards from super secret rooms tend to be a little bit more hit or miss. They do have their own layout, so they're not just copy and pasted from regular secret rooms. Devil Deals can appear at the end of the floor in any floor of Isaac except the first floor. Unless you get like a Joker card or a golden teleporter item, you can't really get in there. It exists, but there's not very many ways of actually getting into it. Devil Deals normally contain like 1 to 3 items that cost heart canisters to get. A lot of them give you back black hearts as well, so it's not too bad. You just won't have a permanent means of refilling your health. A lot of these items as well are usually DPS focused or speed or give you flight. They're really good items generally speaking. Along with this, you can get Devil Deal rooms that have black hearts or red chests in them. Just even more resources to go on top of that. Also, if a room has like 3 black hearts, then it's probably worth it to take whatever deals in front of you. The stick with Devil Deals is you have to take 0 red heart damage for them to be guaranteed at the end of the floor. If you take a single instance of red heart damage on the floor, you will drop down to 36%, and if you take another whatever red heart damage in the boss fight, you will drop down to 1%. This gives a weird shadow buff to characters like Blue Baby and Azazel, who only start off with soul hearts and black hearts, making it so that they'll never actually lose the chance as long as they don't somehow gain red hearts and take damage from those on the second floor. You're pretty much guaranteed this by the second floor. If you find that you drop down to 36% and you'd like to raise that, you can blow up beggars or shopkeepers for about 12.5%, and there are certain items that increase your chances with it as well, like Judas, for example, who starts off with Book of Belial, increasing it another further 12.5%. Angel rooms are the divine equivalent to devil rooms, and all their items actually cost nothing instead, unless they're locked away behind a little gate, in that case it will cost a key. Angel rooms do have another very decisive item pool because they have some really good items, but generally speaking they're pretty mid, though they don't cost any hearts. To get into an angel room you need to pass up a devil deal, and if you've unlocked any floors like chest or hell, you can actually blow up the angels to get a key piece from them. This key piece will increase your chances of getting another angel deal. However, you can also reroll this and it won't be removed from the item pool, so if you want to blow them up, use I6D6 for example to get a different angel item and then come back again and just get the key piece later on. Just because it's spawned doesn't mean it's removed forever. Cursed rooms are special rooms that damage the player on the way in and out. They usually contain stuff like devil deal items, but most of the time they contain jack fucking shit. Still worth it though if you have the health to do it, but don't always expect something great out of it. You can mitigate the entering damage if you have flight. I don't know how that works personally, and if you're playing characters like Azazel, who does start off with flight, he also starts off with the Fool card. So on the first floor, if you find a cursed room, you can enter in, not take any damage, do whatever you need to inside the room, use the Fool card, and get out once again without taking any damage. Free cursed room. This goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, because to this day I constantly make this mistake. Do not go into the room if you are going to not be able to make it out. I've always also been saved by this, by just blowing up a wall that just happens to have a secret room beside it that I just did not know about. But yeah, don't enter the room if you're going to die on the way out. Speaking of, you can also avoid the door on the way in with certain items like stitches, or if you blow up a secret room beside it, you can come in through the wall. Also, if you're really desperate for self-damage, you can damage yourself on the door without entering the room as well if you just really edge towards it. Challenge rooms generally require certain health conditions to be met before you can enter them, either having full health or only one heart left. Much like cursed rooms, it's a very good idea to have a very easy way out, because if you pick up the item in the center and then you have a full card, you can just leave altogether. I would only recommend this if you're in a little bit of a pickle, however, because you can still get rewards from finishing all the bosses. Re-entering the room won't respawn them, and there may be a key or two in it for you, so if you can do it, I definitely would recommend it. So now that we're through all the more specific stuff, I do just want to get into some general tips and tricks so that you have a better mindset when playing this game. The rest of this is just me going to be naming stuff off that you will hopefully keep in mind when you're playing. A very important tip is do not waste a single resource before you know you're putting it to the best use. This goes for items as well. If I'm on the first floor and I go into the item room and it's not a great item, I'm just not going to pick it up. And I'm going to see what else is around on the floor to see if there's some way I re-roll it or do something else with this item pedestal. This should go for keys, this should go for bombs, this should go for coins. Never open the shop if you have 0 coins. This sounds very basic, but the amount of times I've done this is incountable. Also, getting into the habit of leaving consumables and other stuff on the floor for the chance of re-rolling them. Also, just don't use bombs for dealing damage. This is just not worth it. Bombs should be used for opening secret rooms and destroying tinted rocks. There's some other things you can do with them, like if you blow up a rock that's next to a one-spot drop, you can actually create a bridge. You can also do this with poops as well, so if you start off as Blue Baby, you can use this poop item to do this as well. The only exception to this, I would say, is in boss fights like Chubb and Wormwood, who can actually accidentally eat the bomb and deal a massive amount of damage to them, really trivializing the boss fight in general. If you're playing on Afterbirth Plus or above, it's a good idea to turn on the found/missing HUD. This will show you all of your stats, and you should also be able to enable an item list to show you what items you have on you. These stats are also more accurate than the ones you find in your pause screen, which are, funnily enough, not very accurate at all. This is great for knowing the effect certain items have on you. When something says damage up, you'll actually know know how much damage it is giving you. Same with things like the devil and angel chants. Very vital information that you should constantly have presented to you. You should always be looking up item descriptions. The game will never tell you in 100% complete honesty what an item does. There will always be something the game does not tell you about an item. It's very special, especially if you're playing on console where you don't have access to the external item descriptions mod. You're going to want to know what every item does before you even pick it up so that you can gauge if it's necessary in your run. Learning boss patterns is also really important. Most of the bosses in the game only have 3 or 4 attacks and a second phase every now and again. These attacks may be daunting at first, but you quickly realize some patterns that help you exploit them after a while. Like this 3-4 shot attack some bosses do fairly easily just dodge and weave the counter. Once you master this boss may as well be doing nothing at all. General cheese strats for bosses can be stuff like Gertie can't actually look behind her, so if you go above her she will just spawn flies. Bloat, who has the most annoying single attack in the game where he shoots brimstone eyes, completely unchoreographed, cannot do this attack if you are once again above him. So get above that dirty, dirty bastard. The Fallen will split into 2 smaller versions himself once he's at half health, but if you can predict this, it's actually a good idea to leave a bomb right beside him as he starts the animation so that you can hit both of them with the bomb, effectively dealing double damage. This can also be done in the Satan fight if you know how to time it well. Watch enough YouTubers do it, you'll pick up the timing fairly easily enough. If you leave Plum alone, he kind of just fucks off, which I think is amazing. When fighting Gemini, I personally think it's a better idea to kill the small version first because the bigger version doesn't knock back as much when you hit him in the second phase. However, the smaller one will just bounce around the entire room. And it's not hard, but it will add like another 2 or 3 minutes onto your run. And if you're going for boss rush, that is absolutely detrimental to you. Little Horn can actually damage himself with his own bombs fairly easily. It's kind of clumsy actually. And if you have safety scissors, this is one of those bosses where you can get unlimited bombs very early on. When fighting Ragman, always go for his minions first because by himself he's actually just not that imposing in the slightest. If you use a Chaos Guard on Great Gideon, it'll actually reveal a secret room with some items inside. I still have not to this day done this. If you want to kill Mom instantly, you can actually just use the Bible, which is very good to keep in mind if you're doing challenge runs where you're barely scraping by and you just find the Bible in the shop on the last floor. Instant win straight away. Also, if you're playing on versions earlier than Repentance, her stomp attack counts as an explosion. So if you have something like Hostad or Pyromaniac, you can completely negate the damage from this and even heal from it. Speaking of the Bible, if you use it against Satan, you will die instantly. The boss in heaven, Isaac, will never attack you as long as you don't attack him. You'll need to attack him eventually, but this means if you have something like chocolate milk, you can do a full charge up before hitting him, getting some really easy damage off fairly early. Moving off from the bosses, we're going to just go over some of the active items now that I feel like have some notable interactions that you would want to keep in mind. The active item known as a pony can be used to enter cursed rooms with its free flight, but can also be used to exit them freely as well because you gain immunity during your dash. Before Repentance, blank card was my main way of actually breaking the game. All you needed was, well, blank card, a 2 of diamonds, restock, and some batteries, and you are pretty much set to get every item in the game now. If you have unlimited money and unlimited items in the shop, that is just unlimited multiplied by unlimited. It's absolutely amazing. This could also be done with blank card and Yera. If you find enough coins on the floor, you can just endlessly duplicate them. You can also endlessly duplicate batteries this way. If you really want to exploit this, you can do what I did, which is the first challenge I ever completed was the one that gave you the Yera and the Proto runes. So, those were the only ones that would ever spawn in, which means I got them almost every run. Once you unlock a blank card, then you're going to get this pretty consistently, which is a really good way of unlocking a lot of items early on. But as you unlock more, the item pools fill up and you're less likely to get them every time. Book of Revelations actually increases your devil/angel chance and also replaces the bosses with one of their 4 harbingers. These guys always drop either cube of meat or bile of bandages, which are a very good thing to get multiple copies of as they stack in a very interesting way. Book of Shadows can be used to exploit things that would normally damage you in return for money, like blood banks. D20 can break greed mode very easily with just a few batteries, since consumables can be re-rolled into chests, which can be re-rolled into more consumables. I've mentioned this before, but Dad's Key can open literally every door in the game, so if there's anywhere you want to get into, 99% of the time, Dad's Key will let let you in, and it's only 2 charges. Getting 3 Guppy items will transform you into Guppy, which is one of the most powerful transformations in the game as it effectively doubles your damage. Along with this, you can get spun from getting 3 syringe items, which will also give you a massive stat boost. If you have prayer card and a car battery, you can effectively get a free heart canister every time you use the active item. Red flame and other flame items can destroy shopkeepers, which can come in handy. Remote detonator's biggest benefit is that it gives you 5 bombs upon pickup, so if you see it but you don't necessarily want it, you can still pick it up for the bombs. Tammy's head plus almost any tier effect item like brimstone is absolutely broken. You can use the boomerang to also destroy shopkeepers. We need to go deeper, and the rune of Awaz, now that I mention it, can actually make crawl spaces, which is very helpful. In areas like greed mode and boss rush where you can be in one room but still gain multiple charges, Box of Friends is absolutely broken because with just 2 or 3 activations you can pretty much fill the room with your own familiars. Before Repentance, Diplopia and Steam Sale would make all items in the shop absolutely free, meaning all you need to do now is get 1 restock and you've essentially gotten every item in the game. In Repentance it only goes to 75% because they do half and then half of the half, and that continues on every time you gain a copy of Steam Sale, but 75% off is still really, really good. Mom's Box not only generates trinkets, but also increases your luck by 1 and doubles the effects of any trinkets you're holding. Teleport 2.0 can be used to access Angel and Devil rooms or even Secret rooms if you really needed to, and if you've seen every room on the floor, you can use it to access the I Am Error room, which can hold some pretty good items in it. Coupon can be used on Devil deals. Butterbean can be spawned in as Wait What, which is a completely different item that can actually destroy obstacles and do pretty reasonable damage, so always pick up Butterbean just to make sure it's not its alternate version. If you do get Archie, it's best to save it for as late as possible because the longer you go into your run, the more items you're eventually going to get. Though if you use Archie, no matter what, you're probably going to break the game and win instantly. Spin Down Dice is really, really good if you have the external descriptions mod. However, if you're playing on console and don't have access to that mod, you're going to be doing a lot of Wikipedia searches. I honestly leave this item behind so much because of the mental load it takes on my brain if I'm playing on console. As mentioned earlier, Stitches gives temporary immunity after switching, so it can be used for things like free curse rooms. Now we're on to the passive items that I feel like have some noteworthy effects. For example, Less Than 3 also fully restores your health, so you use up all your hearts before you pick it up, for example at a blood bank. BFFs is almost an essential item if you have 1 or more familiars, as it usually just doubles the effectiveness of whatever they do. Though I'd still recommend looking it up just in case there's something very specific that you'd like to know. The Cancer Zodiac item makes it so that you can't take more than half a heart of damage twice per room, so that the first hit is the only one that can deal a whole heart or more, and every subsequent one will only do half a heart. There are many, many Devil Deal items that give you black hearts that won't kill you once you have the black hearts after the deal, so very often it's worth it even if you think you're going to die. Dark Bomb is a must-have for most runs where you won't have red heart canisters, especially something like with Azazel, where red hearts are going to be dropping but you effectively can't use them. Dark Bomb can turn those into soul hearts, which just means more hearts. Even on characters with red heart canisters, this is pretty good. E. coli and Midas Touch are okay items in isolation, but when you know which enemies you can and can't touch without taking contact damage, they become absolutely broken with the amount of enemies you can just walk up to and go Little Baggy transform all cards and runes into pills for the run. In return, Starter Deck turns all pills into cards and runes. It's a very good idea to take this when playing characters like Kane, who start off with Lucky Foot, which can be an unlocked item as well. Turns all bad pills into good pills, which is very good when synergized with something like Bottle of Pills or Pill Baby as well. Both the Missing Page 2 and its trinket counterpart will increase the damage of Black Hearts and the Necronomicon. Wafer makes it so that you can only take half heart damage, effectively doubling your health from the womb onwards. This is a very good item to take. Out of the base characters, Eve is the only one with a passive effect not tied to an item, in that Whore of Babylon will still trigger its effect on her if she has 1 full red heart, rather than most other characters who need half a red heart to do so. Crowd of Light will literally double your damage, so pick that shit up. Number 2 drops a butt bomb after firing for more than 3 seconds, which is essentially just free bombs. Sulfuric acid can be used to destroy rocks, and and even open up secret rooms. Tarot Clot doubles the effectiveness of your cards and runes. If you pick up Echo Chamber, do not for the love of God take any telepills or teleporting cards, as you will regret this later down on the line. Strawman is not great when used for combat. Its best use is actually in Sacrifice Room or Blood Banks to get some resources out of him. And I think that just about covers everything I wanted to cover today. Like I said at the start of the video, I'm mostly making this because a lot of my friends are getting into Isaac and want to learn more, and I had to write a whole essay on it apparently. The Binding of Isaac is such a unique experience that I feel like everyone should experience it, considering I played it for as long as I did. I can't recommend the game enough. If you're watching this and you haven't played it, please pick it up. It's not that expensive. If you have any tips that you like, you can leave them down in the comments below to help anyone else, and if you still want to find out more, there's always the wiki fandom, but also the comments on this video. I might make more beginner intros to other games that I like to play. My problem is I just hate recording gameplay. Otherwise I'd be a gaming channel, but I just can't. Anywho, I planned for this video to be 12 minutes, so I'm gonna end it here and go to sleep finally. See ya!